In today's card project, I'm going to be creating this gorgeous silhouette scene using only my die cuts. Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. I would love it if you subscribed, liked this video, and shared it with your friends. The sets that I'm going to be using today are the Lovely Layers Spring Birds, Lovely Layers Spring Greenery, and the Be Still stamp set. Now, if you're familiar with me, you know that I love to make ink blended backgrounds and I love silhouette images. And I was really in the mood to create a silhouette scene, but I also really love the Lovely Layers die cuts. So I decided to create my own silhouette scene using the die cuts and die cutting them from black cardstock. So I picked out a few of the greenery from the Lovely Layers Spring Greenery set, and I'm just holding them down with Easy C tape so I can die cut these from the black cardstock. I will be die cutting them twice so that I can layer them up. I'm also going to place that outline, or this is like a base layer of that spring bird, so that I can use that as a silhouette as well. So after I run these through my die cut machine, I'm going to take my craft pick and just poke out any little pieces that may have been left behind so that I can prepare them for the front of my card. Now I'm going to start working on my background. Since black is a pretty easy color that anything goes with, I can really do whatever I want for my colors in the background. I'm going to be using this grid paper and I'm going to hold it down onto my work surface with some tape. Now, you're probably thinking this is crazy because it's a glass surface, but honestly, with the black glass mat, I struggle seeing the colors, and this is just way easier. I don't have to clean up so much with my inks. I have a piece of Hammermill Cardstock that is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to start towards the bottom or one end using Scattered Straw Distress Oxide ink. You may notice that I already have some color down on that grid paper, and that's because I started with Distress inks and I had used Squeeze Lemonade, and that was just way too bright. So I just kind of threw that in my scrap bin and I started over. Now, you may have noticed that I switched blending tools. I started with a dome foam. I switched over with the Salvaged Patina to my Honeybee Stamps blending brushes. Now, here is where this is all personal preference. When I want to lay down a lot of color like I do for this card, I really do prefer my dome foam blending tools. I thought maybe I would switch to the brushes, but it's more of a workout with my arm. I would mainly use the brushes if I want more of a subtle background. But when I want to apply a lot of color, I pick the dome foam blending tools. Now, I did that Salvaged Patina in the middle, and then I'm coming in on the other end with Seedless Preserves. Now, this is where you really kind of have to work your colors because you may notice there is a very distinct line. So I'm bringing my Salvaged Patina back in and I'm going to go over that area once again, kind of blending up into the Seedless Preserves. Now, as you're starting to build up your color, you're going to want to go lighter hand, meaning not applying as much pressure with your blending tool, regardless of what tool you're using. And also, I'm finding when you go in kind of a bigger circular motion like you see here with the Seedless Preserves, it's a lot easier to not apply as much pressure with the larger circles. And then I'm going to finish it off by coming back in with that Scattered Straw and just kind of finishing that off to create that more of a smoothless blend. Once I'm happy with my background, I am going to add a little bit of interest and texture to the background by taking some water and picking that up with my paintbrush. Because oxides react really well to water, I'm going to flick some of this water onto the background. And you're going to see, especially in that darker color, how that water really reacts and kind of creates those little speckled areas. I'm going to pick up the excess water with my paper towel, and then I really wanted some speckles to just really pop from the background. So I'm going to bring in a white paint. You can use whatever white paint that you like to use for splatters. I diluted it with a little bit of that leftover water just to make it easier to pick up with my paintbrush, and then add these flicks of white. I also think gold splatters would look really good on this too. Then I'll take my background and just set it off on the side to dry and work on a sentiment. Now the sentiment, like I mentioned, is going to come from this Be Still stamp set. there is a sentiment on here. I've used it numerous times, and that's just mainly because I think it has a beautiful message. It says something along the lines of, the world is a better place because you're in it. I think it's just a very friendly greeting, very uplifting and encouraging. So I'm stamping this on Hammermill white cardstock using my Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink, stamping it twice to make sure it's giving me a really nice dark impression. Then I'm going to line up the coordinating die, hold that down with a low tack tape, and run that through my die cut machine. I also die cut it 2 more times, and I'm going to layer this up using my precision tip glue. This is just going to add a little bit of dimension and stability behind my sentiment, and it's a lot easier to build up the dimension by layering it with cardstock versus trying to cut a bunch of thin foam squares. I had mentioned earlier when I was die cutting my greenery that I was going to be die cutting it twice. And this is why I'm going to be layering up these pieces as well. So each piece that I die cut, I cut out 2 of them so that I could add that liquid glue to the back and then attach these. This also is going to build up that stability. You could see some of these pieces have some really fine lines. So I went through and did that for all the pieces, including my bird. Now that all of my die cut pieces and my sentiment are ready, I can start figuring out the placement. So I always start by just kind of laying everything out first. Once I'm happy with it, then I come in and start gluing it down. It probably would have been a lot easier if I would have used something like press and seal, but I didn't think of it at the time. So this always works for me, where I just lay everything out, and then starting in the back. So the piece that goes furthest in the background is what I start gluing down. I added a little bit of that glue and then just start building up the scene. Now, some of these pieces, like this larger leaf, I maybe could have added some foam squares to because the leaves are big enough. And it does overlap the stem just slightly. So there is going to be just a little bit of a bump where it is uneven, but being that it's all black, I don't think anyone's really going to notice unless they're actually touching the card. So I'm going to continue adding my glue and attaching my pieces, and you can see that I'm starting to have it trail off a little bit, kind of going down and off the card. I think that just helps draw the eye in. Everything is not so completely filled in. It's giving me a little bit of space. And then finishing off with my bird towards the top. So I really did kind of take that into consideration that my bird is a fairly large size. So I wanted to make sure to fit most of that in. Then once that's done, I'm going to flip the cardstock over and I'm going to trim off any of that excess that's overhanging because I don't plan on trimming this card panel down. I'm going to leave it all as is. And then for the sentiment, that actually took me some time to decide where to actually put it. I most likely would have put it in that top right-hand corner if I hadn't added the bird. I kind of fiddled around. I didn't attach it. I kind of just set it in an area and then walked away for a little while, came back, decided I liked where it was at. So then once I made the decision, I could go ahead and commit to that by adding liquid glue and attaching that down to the card front. Now this looks great as is. I love that dark black cardstock on my blended background, but I thought I would step it up a little bit. And normally the way I do that is taking a white gel pen. Now, sometimes it can be a little scary because if you add some white highlights where you really don't like it or just didn't work out the way you thought, in this case, it's super easy because I can just die cut another piece of black cardstock and add it on top. Most of this I was really happy with. The bird was a little scary because I wasn't exactly sure how that would look. I did end up being okay with where I put the highlights. Maybe I would have put them on the belly, not really sure, but I was going to leave it. I was really happy with the background and I was very excited that this idea worked out to use die cuts to create my silhouettes. I may have to dig through my other Lovely Layers sets and see if I can create this same type of silhouette look. And maybe you have some in your stash that you could give this technique a try. All of the supplies used today will be listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for joining me today.